That is the day when not only Solomon's temple was destroyed in the 6th century BC, but also the Second Temple in AD 70. Now we see that as the Holy Spirit departs from the earth, those who have defiled the Third Temple, the Temple of the Holy Spirit, are left desolate and are destroyed with the unbelieving masses on the same day, Tisha B'Av, as the earth is cleansed by fire. If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. Tisha B'Av, the saddest day for Israel, will become the saddest day for humanity, while for those who have not rejected him, the fast of the 5th month will also become a joyful day. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th shall be to the house of Judah joy and gladness, and cheerful feasts. Therefore love the truth and peace. After a 7-day space travel to Orion, during which, due to time dilation effects, 1,000 years pass on Earth, there are exactly 10 days before March 16, as the saints would experience it, until the crossing of Jordan. This 10-day period for the Gog-Magog war is remarkably similar to an older study, where we connected it to the final battle against the 10 Commandments of God's kingdom. Notice how on the 7th day, there are 2 significant feasts. One is Tu B'Av, which is one of the happiest feasts of the year, and a popular time for weddings, due to its history mentioned in Judges 21, when the men of Benjamin took wives from among the daughters of Israel. How fitting to have the Lord's marriage feast on exactly that date, after catching up his bride. Furthermore, from the earthly perspective, this is the time of Purim, when Israel was allowed to fight against their enemies, who would have destroyed them. Specifically, this is the memorial for those in walled cities, who fought a second day. It points to the treading of the winepress outside the walled New Jerusalem, the victory of God and his people over their enemies, who would kill them all if they were given the time. The blood moon on March 3 marks the anniversary of Haman's death decree against Israel. But what significance does it have on the 5th day of travel? The treading of the winepress begins with the rapture itself, when the holy city is taken away. However, we have long understood that the 7 days of travel follow the stars of Orion, in order of their distance, culminating with the Sea of Glass, which is physically relatively near Alnilam. This leads to an itinerary as follows. Bellatrix, Betelgeuse, Saiph, Rigel, on the 5th day Alnitak, Mintaka in Alnilam, and the Sea of Glass in the Orion Nebula. On day 5, the blood moon marks how far the blood flows from the winepress. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. As was presented in our earliest Orion studies, the horse bridles point to the Horsehead Nebula, which resembles a horse immersed in a sea of blood. And that nebula is very near the star Alnitak. The blood moon measures not only the distance to the horse bridles, but to Alnitak, the wounded one, and is thus the measure of the stature of Christ. That is exactly what we saw measured in another form in the stars at the foot and top of the cross on the Maseroth. Personally, I find it amazing how God layered different aspects and measurements into a single verse of prophecy. Later, I'll show you yet another fulfillment of these 1600 furlongs directly on the Maseroth. You can be excited. Do you see how beautifully fitting it all is? When you see the pieces coming together? Another point is regarding the symbolism of the seventh day on this earth versus the new earth. The solemn day when sin and sinners are finally destroyed by God's most powerful GRB at evening, Zechariah 14:6-7, is the final crossing of Jordan. It is the death of sin and the rising up in the newness of life as the end of sin gives way to the first day of the new creation. That was an excerpt from the document of January 16, 2026, when the True Midnight Cry message was first given to us. I think now this table is fully explained, and you now understand that the two keys in our sister's dream refer to the inheritance in heaven. And thus we arrive at February 27, 2026, as the date for the first resurrection of all the righteous dead, and for the rapture at Jesus' return. If you want, we can call this part up to here The Boy Who Knows the Time, Part 4, because now the meaning of that very important dream has been fully recognized. I could now shout aloud, "The bridegroom cometh!" This time even proclaimed to the very day. But I'm saving that for the last slides, because the entire timeline of the two witnesses must coherently extend up to February 27, 2026, and some key events in Revelation must also fit perfectly. Brother John asked himself whether there was a sign in heaven that many Christians worldwide had really seen, or at least heard of, that could somehow offer an anchor point in the timeline of the two witnesses. And indeed, only one sign comes to mind. It's the woman sign from Revelation 12, verses 1 and 2. Let's read it. "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered." The sign appears in heaven, so there's no doubt about where one must look. Not in the first heaven, which would be our immediate atmosphere, that is, where our clouds are. No, it's the second heaven, where the sun, moon, and stars, along with comets, are located. The third heaven is directly with God, just to mention it. Here is the constellation Virgo, who is the only woman in the Maseroth. From the text, we know that the sun must be somewhere beside the woman, that is, where she would wear a dress. And yes, that is the case. But further criteria must be fulfilled, because the sun is in Virgo once per year. The moon must be under her feet. Okay, that limits the sign, but it's still once per year, because the moon makes one round per month in the Maseroth. But there's still more that must be fulfilled. We must find a crown of stars above the head of Virgo. Now, above Virgo is Leo, and it consists of 9 stars. But it so happens that Venus, Mars, and Mercury join in Leo on a certain day, thus forming a crown of 12 stars. Now the sign is no longer limited to once per year, but this is now extraordinarily rare. But God leaves no doubt and gives yet another criterion. She was pregnant and was about to give birth. And here Jupiter comes into play, which must be at a very specific position in the woman, namely in the lower part of Virgo, as any adult knows. And so it is. And astronomers say that this sign occurs only once in 7,000 years, or in other words, it's unique. I explain this so precisely so that everyone watching this video is clear that God gives this absolutely unique sign for a very specific reason. No one can deny it. In the text, we read that this woman was pregnant and obviously in labor. And that is the textual clue that Brother John followed. What if this sign indicates that from here on, the time of the birth pangs in Revelation would begin? Jupiter is the king planet and stands for our King, Jesus, and his kingdom, which he finally wants to establish. Now you already understand the big picture, the large time frame. When 3i Atlas reaches Jupiter on March 16, 2026, then Jesus' eternal kingdom is purified from all sin and death, and the new earth is created. All evil, all woe will be past on the perceived March 16, as we learned earlier from the table. Brother John and I have already presented the timelines of the two witnesses in the videos when Michael stands up and the sign of the Son of Man. But you already know that the middle chapter is the most difficult chapter in Revelation to decode. However, today, this is the most culminative and harmonious attempt, which also brings the perfect understanding. We know from these previous videos that the corona crisis represented the first woe and must fall within the 1290 days. Brother John, therefore, calculated forward from the very striking September 23, 2017, and obtained two key dates, April 5, 2021, and November 30, respectively December 1, 2024. The 1290 days refer to the time in which the mRNA serum was developed to then wreak devastation in the body. The devastation is that the DNA of man, given by the Creator in Eden and persistent until now, was attacked and destroyed. The 1335 days point to simply enduring and not getting vaccinated until the blessing comes. This much was a brief summary of these two time periods. The details have already been sufficiently explained in the various videos. What was the blessing in the end? The blessing was and is that the seventh seal was opened. Let's read. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven, about the space of half an hour. We've always puzzled over when the seventh seal really opened. Was it here at this star or at the constellation boundary? But now we see that it must be this occultation of comet K2 with this star on December 1.